Today, Albertans want answers, but are seeing this NDP government refuse to answer questions on legal action against PPAs to avoid prejudicing the court case. And it was only yesterday that the Premier said getting into the details would not be appropriate for this forum and should be reserved for the courts. Well, this caucus agrees. It's entirely inappropriate to attempt to influence public opinion with the case before the courts. So would the Premier be able to tell Albertans why she launched an ad campaign in papers around the province? Does she consider that to be an appropriate forum to influence public opinion?
Deputy Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and to the member for the question. Certainly, we think it's important for Albertans to know what their government's doing to defend their rights and their interests. The official opposition and the third party have made it very clear who they're interested in defending, that being the other side of the contracts, companies who've been very successful at benefiting during the good times, and now they want to pass back losses on to individual Albertans as well as to industrial consumers. And, Mr. Speaker, we don't believe that's fair, and that's exactly why we're asking the courts to make a ruling on whether or not the clause that was added at the 11th hour by the third party and their subsidiaries is indeed...
Thank you, honourable member. First supplemental.
Given that the Premier and the Deputy Premier refuse to be held accountable on this issue and the Energy Minister has been muzzled, and given that the NDP instead thought it would be best to explain a sham of a court case to Albertans with a $100,000 ad campaign to the Premier, $100,000 may not seem like a lot to you, but it is to taxpayers. And with all due respect, Deputy Premier, instead of spending money on NDP political spin, would it not be better spent on education and health care?
Deputy Premier.
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Speaker. We are moving forward on making sure that Albertans are defended and protected, and certainly we don't believe that the end-run clause is in the best interest of Albertans, nor do we believe it was done in a way that was appropriate, and that's why we're moving forward with the courts and asking them to make a ruling on this so that Albertans don't have to pay more than what they were promised in the first place, which was shared risk and shared reward, Mr. Speaker. It's time for that commitment to come through.
Time.
Supplemental.
Well, given that the NDP also used government services to launch a public website full of political rhetoric, and given that in this House this government refuses to be accountable to the Albertans on why they're suing these companies, Deputy Premier, suing Albertans is not going to bat for them. The government can't have it both ways. You attempted to influence public opinion when the matter was before the courts, and Albertans aren't buying it. Today, will you not waste another tax dollar on this litigation trying to save your own political skin and drop this lawsuit?
Yeah. Deputy Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd say all Albertans have skin in this game, and the reason why we do is because 15 years ago we were promised that there was going to be public consultation, they would talk about what would be in the PPA contracts, and at the 11th hour, the party that's asking the very question clearly documented, negotiated with Enron, and snuck in a loophole that certainly wasn't done in a way that passes any kind of nod test, Mr. Speaker, and that's why we're going to the courts, to make sure that the courts can make a ruling.